Fostering connection through authenticity, the People Pleaser podcast validates struggles, celebrates growth, and inspires positive change.
Together, let's embrace vulnerability, challenge patterns, and evolve with compassion.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the relaunching of the People Pleaser podcast. This is Corie, your host, and I am thrilled to share that today I am joined by my co-host, Cindy. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Corie.
So happy that we're finally here. I can't remember exactly when I made the announcement that you were coming, but it's been a couple months, so it's been a little hiatus, but I want everyone listening to kind of just wrap your heads around the idea of like merging on a creative project. And Cindy and I, we just care so deeply about this work, and it's not just the work, it's like our connection and our friendship and our relationship that we've just been putting a lot of care and nurturing into what we want this to all look like. So if you have no idea who I am, that is amazing and that's exciting. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself, and Cindy's going to tell you and us a little bit about herself. And then today's episode is really just about getting to know us as individuals, us as collaborators, and us as maybe people pleasers. So this is really just a get to know you type episode. So I just want to start by saying that I have been doing this podcast as mostly like a solo passion project for almost 2 years, or I think it's actually 2 years this month. And I felt super called to just start conversations and raise awareness around people pleasing. And I did reach a point where I may have taken it as far as I could go on my own. And it was kind of, exciting to do on my own, but also there was a little bit of loneliness or a little bit of like some roadblocks that I hit on doing it completely on my own. But while I was doing it, there was just a lot of life stuff happening as well behind the scenes. So I am Canadian, born and raised in Victoria, and in August of 2024, I immigrated to the United States. So for a lot of this podcast, I've been going through the big changes of immigrating and kind of starting life anew in a new country. I've also been doing my master's in counseling psychology, so that's been a really big pull of my energy and attention and bandwidth. And I also, in October, started working full-time for the local high school in my city, and I've been working on the counseling team there. That's just to give you a little bit of context of what I am bringing. There's a lot more that kind of constitutes who I am and what I bring, but I figure that's a pretty good place to start. And Cindy, I wanted to know if you wanted to share a little bit about who you are and what you're bringing. And
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Corie. I also live on Vancouver Island, born and raised, and lived in Victoria most of my life, and then moved up to the Cowichan Valley about 13 years ago and have been living there since. And I'm kind of at a different place in my life right now. I've spent the last 18 years being a parent to 4 children with complex special needs, and have also been a lifelong learner. So I've always been going to school and love learning, a lot of background in psychology. And then the last 5 years, I really stepped into becoming a somatic practitioner and a cranial sacral therapist, and really excited about delving further into that area and bringing it to this podcast as well, because Corie and I have talked a lot about the combination of the mind and the body and how this plays out, and they're both very resourceful areas for this. I also a lot of learning through the last 18 years with my children, a lot of trauma-informed education and special needs education. So bringing that to the table as well, and just really excited to be here and building a community.
Yeah, we have been for the last, I don't know when we started really like having our calls, but it's been a few months now.
I think August, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
This has been a long time coming. But we've just been getting on FaceTime calls and just like, I don't know, the first hour, we're just like catching up and like really relating into, even though we're on like different paths in our lives, there's so many things that are, that we're sharing and that we connect with each other on. And it's been like, yeah, like just chatting and like getting into like deep conversations and then remembering like, oh yeah, and the podcast. So what's the plan? So we are obviously really passionate. We have a lot to say. And I just believe, and I think Cindy probably shares this belief that like people learn from each other and like can connect through conversation and those shared experiences. And it can be a really lonely world. And we are trying to bring in community, just like what Cindy was saying, like just wanting to be of service, wanting to be helpful, wanting to, bring that awareness around like being seen, being heard, being understood, and that we are not alone on this journey, even though it can really feel like that sometimes. So we are really here with that community spirit in mind.
And that's actually kind of how this all started. Was I had been wanting to do a podcast for a long time, but just really wanted to do it in partnership with someone and have a creative, collaborative environment, and had been listening to your podcast. And the more I was listening to it, almost every single episode, you were describing almost verbatim an experience that I had had. And, you know, just I've already always had such a connection to you, but just that similarity and just hearing it more and more. And then there was a period where you kind of were questioning the podcast and where to go with it. And for a few months, I'd been thinking, oh, I should reach out to Corie and, you know, see if she'd be interested in doing a collaboration. But my own fear held me back from doing it. And then you started podcasting about questioning it and everything. And I was laying in bed one night just thinking really like, I could just see everywhere we could go with this and how great it would be. And I jumped out of bed at 1:00 in the morning and sent you the email and then went to bed and freaked out.
That was, so that's how this really all started, is Cindy sending that 1 a.m. email. And that was a really, really cool experience to receive that email. To just like, I don't know, I put so much out there and I can be like very vulnerable and very honest and just sharing like my experiences of not just people pleasing, but just like being a human in this world. And I think it's so common for us to think that we're the only ones going through that thing. And I think a lot of my questioning came from a place of like, I am just like really putting myself out there in this vulnerable way. And I would just like hit record and then like upload and then be like, oh my God, is this even relatable? Is this crazy? Am I crazy? And so to have you like see me and understand me and relate to me was almost like it almost felt like I was being exposed even more, like, oh wow, like I'm not alone, and this is helpful, and this does have meaning, even if it's just to one person. Like how cool is that? And I don't think it's just to one person. I think this is this is important. This podcast, that's why I've had such a hard time letting it go, because I've felt like it is important, but the sustainability of just doing it on my own, and that was just, it was missing that aspect of like conversation and relatability and perspective. I think like sometimes I just felt like I was talking to myself, because I kind of was. But
and I think your authenticity and your vulnerability are your superpower. I think that's what really drew me to you, because I like to navigate the world in the same way, and it was very refreshing, and just feeling the connection and feeling like having a connection to you because you were so vulnerable and authentic.
Oh, well, ditto. Thank you. So tell everyone how we know each other, because we have quite the history.
Well, we met way back in 1998. We were both involved with an international children's youth program. I had come as an adult and you had come as a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
And I initially met your mom, actually, and had an immediate connection with her, a very special human being. And Corie is very much like her mother as well, exudes a real warmth and passion and just connects with people easily, which is the same for your mom. So her and I shared a really special connection very early on. And then I met you through the program when you joined. And I was involved with the organization off and on for about 16 years. And it was very formative in my life, for sure.
Yeah.
And I always attributed that program that I think it's actually where I first learned really intimate connections, because you already had so much common ground with everyone that was involved in the organization.
Yeah.
So the relationships tend to develop very quickly and very deeply, because a lot of the stuff you get to know about people initially was already understood.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, so I think that it taught me a lot about vulnerability and intimacy in relationships, actually. But yeah, we just kind of went on through there, and then Corie and I have both worked at the same restaurant for years, off and on,
Totally
different times
random.
as well. Yeah, and then really, I think we reconnected through Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah,
I think, and just started
always
connecting.
had followed each other, I think, but not like having necessarily direct or like consistent communication. Like probably lots of years had passed in between 1998 and today. But yeah, I think always just kind of keeping tabs on each other. And
I always liken it to, we were always at very different places in our life, just, because of our ages and things like that, but always this overlap. And that now we're kind of stepped into this time of our life where the age isn't as relevant either.
Totally.
Like we're both full-blown adults and then did follow each other. And then really, I think actually when you launched the podcast and I started following that. That's when I started.
Yeah. And you would reach out like just through Instagram, on the People Pleaser podcast Instagram.
Yeah. And I think that's really when it changed, like just kind of evolved into what it is now.
Yeah. I really appreciate what you said about, so the youth organization that we were a part of is CISV, and it was a really like coming of age experience for me to enter in as a 12-year-old. And the whole premise of the organization was like building connections through peace, essentially. And it was about, we got to go on like all kinds of different trips and be in like these small delegations of people like representing Canada or representing Victoria, and just going all in on like building relationships with people from different cultures and from so many different parts of the world. And I know for me, like that was very formative in how I've navigated the world ever since. And I do think it's kind of, it could be a little culty in some perspectives, but it's like, I will always feel like a kinship to anybody who basically has had that experience. Like, I think it's like created not just that common experience, but like common language, common perspective. Like we were really establishing some really profound roots through there.
Definitely. And I think also the immersiveness of the experience was so powerful, because you really, like, I don't think I've ever experienced such presence.
Yeah.
when I was there, you were just present. You were in the experience. The rest of the world was just not there. It was really just the relationships in that environment and getting to know people at that level, right? So when I stopped with CISV, every summer I would grieve because I was so used to being in that environment for a month in the summers that my summers I would just ache for that experience.
Well, and I remember coming home from those experiences and like trying to share or communicate with people like what I had just been through. And it was almost impossible to put words to those experiences. It was such a felt experience. And I would always minimize it, especially like coming and trying to tell my friends about it. Like I remember I went to a camp like literally the day I graduated from grade 12. So all my friends were like going off partying and celebrating, and it was like, woo, like the summer of like our graduation. And I was like, okay, off to the Philippines. And, I wouldn't change that for the world. But it was also like, I came home from that experience being like, you guys don't even understand what I just went through.
So true.
And somehow I'm like jealous that you guys all got drunk in a forest. But
Well, I think that's why the friendships stand the test of time too, right? Because it is such a connection. There is no one else that understands it. Yeah. And I host international students right now, and I actually will say that to my students, right? Like when you go home, these friendships will sustain you because your friends back home won't understand the experience you've just had and the ways you've grown and the challenges you've met, right? And that's really what it was for us. I mean, in the moments, there were some struggles, sometimes in hard times, but afterwards, you just look back on it with such fondness and growth. And
to think that, we were casting our net to like such a large community to like develop community beyond what was like maybe available to us at home, like to feel connected to people all over the world and to know that like I could go to Germany and like feel connection and like find safety or wherever it might be, the Philippines or, there's just so many different people from all over the world. So I think, we both still like really navigate the world with like that community forward approach. And this is just an extension of that perspective, in my opinion.
Yes. And I think it's also when I first realized how small the world actually was and how connected we actually are and how similar we are and more about our similarities than our differences. And I had a completely different take on the world.
Yeah.
After CISV.
Yeah. Well, this podcast goes out to CISV.
It's all for you, Doris.
Yeah. Doris Allen, the OG. But it's true. Like, Cindy, you are among, some of my best friends from CISV. Like I haven't been connected with CISV for years, but like some of my nearest and dearest, and to have been able to share that experience with not just my mom, but like my brother and my sister, and like we were all in. So yeah, pretty amazing.
I remember when my stepson went, I had such a moment of proudness that he was going to get to experience the same thing I did, right? And it will always be some of the best years of my life.
Aw, so
really
cool.
Yeah.
So cool. So that is a little bit about how we have come together. And, this podcast, the People Pleaser podcast, we also kind of connected, or we have connected on just the experience of people pleasing and kind of being in these periods of people pleasing behaviors or tendencies. And so we prepared a few questions that we want to like ask each other, and it's an opportunity to deepen kind of the understanding of who we are, but also like what people pleasing kind of means to us or how it shows up in our life. And there's also just a few questions just about like this podcast and what we hope to create here. So, Cindy, how would you describe your relationship to people pleasing, whether that's more from a historical perspective or how it's showing up currently in your current life?
Well, when I look back and think about how people pleasing presents for me, I think that I had a lot of things line up in my life to bring me to becoming a people pleaser. So I was born the eldest of four, eldest girl. I had two parents that were pretty emotionally unavailable. I have two sisters that are quite a bit younger than myself and would often care for them, babysit, take care. My father struggled with mental health and probably heavy narcissistic tendencies. I had most of my partners historically have had strong narcissistic tendencies, if not full-blown narcissists. So I really grew up in an environment where it was my survival skill. I'm also highly sensitive, an empath, and so I feel like everything just kind of lined up to be that personality. I think also I was born a caretaker. My personality is to take care of people. So when you line all those things up, I don't think it's surprising at all that I ended up falling into people pleasing. Over the last 8 years probably, I've been doing a lot of healing and a lot of growth and really trying to identify and work on that quality in myself. Part of the struggle has been that I don't feel that I'm ever not going to be this person, but how do I draw boundaries for myself and not give to the point of nothingness? I don't think that I could say I would ever be happy not being a giver. It's just part of my character. I also will never not feel deeply about all things. All things. So learning to navigate that and realizing that it's okay to be that person, but how do I protect myself and make sure that I have reserve for myself and take care of myself as well. And that was probably the biggest learning for me, because historically self-care brought on guilt. I typically created situations where there wasn't time or space for self-care. So even when I look at my journey into parenthood, I adopted 4 children with severe complex special needs, all within 3 months of each other, right? So of course I did. So just historically creating that space, and then also the awareness that in taking care of others, I don't have to take care of myself. There isn't space for me to be vulnerable or expose myself. I can focus on other people. So really just navigating those things, figuring out how to still be true to myself, but honor and protect myself at the same time has really been most of what I've learned. I would also say the greatest gift has been age. With age has come, I've always heard it when you turn 40 and 50, you learn to say no, like just priorities shift. And that really has been true for me. I'd say especially when I turned 50, I started being able to, it was okay to say no. It was okay to take care of myself. And not to say I've mastered it. I still, if things get stressful, right now I'm in a stressful period of my life, self-care is the first thing to slide off the table in those situations. So I think that it's an ongoing journey. I don't think that I would ever say I'm healed, or I don't ever have to worry about it or keep it in my mind that I might be stepping back into those habits. I also would say that I learned that it was a wisdom of my body. So it was something that my body did at the time to cope with things that I might not have been able to cope with, but it no longer serves me. Right. So I think a lot of the strategies we pick up are our body's wisdom, and then we learn. They serve us when we need them, but then there's a time that we need to release and step out of that, and it's no longer serving us. So that's another healing I've done through my somatics work really helps with that. And I'd say right now that I feel I'm in a pretty good place with people pleasing. It's more something that is on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for it. I feel like I'm quite readily able to see when it happens and reflect on it. I don't beat myself up anymore, though. It's more like, okay, there's information in that. What would I do different? Why was that happening? And being gentle with myself.
Yeah.
In all of it, I think is probably where I'm at with it right now, an awareness.
Well, and it sounds like you've identified that part of yourself that needs caretaking. Like the caretaker needs to be taken care of as well.
Yeah, and I think I've also realized that it's very hard for me to take care of myself when there's a lot around me that needs caretaking. Like that's a struggle for me. I just automatically step into caretaker mode rather than caretaking for and unfortunately, like my parenting journey has been crisis parenting. With special needs, it's just you're dealing with fire after fire after fire. So it was really a bit of the ideal situation for my personality type, not to have to focus on myself.
You're like, I'm just smoldering.
Yeah, right. And now it's the tail end. Like my youngest is 17, going into graduate next year. So it's perfect timing for me also to be stepping into a season of myself, and I'm intentionally not creating caretaking
opportunities
environment. Yeah, except for myself.
Yeah.
I
can relate to a lot. I can relate to like so much of what you're saying. Like, I really do see my people pleasing as a trauma response. Mine really does look like hypervigilance, like always trying to create safety. And my safety is by kind of like massaging the environment, like scanning for potential danger and softening the edges of the danger. And I mean, I too was the eldest daughter in my household. My mom was the eldest daughter in her household. So I know she holds a lot of guilt around this, but it's no fault of hers. But my mom's one of my biggest role models. And so I know that I did adapt and learn from her and how she navigates the world. Growing up, my dad was an alcoholic, and I lived mostly with my mom and part-time with my dad. And I just remember feeling worried about my dad from a very young age. And things were quickly the boundaries were very blurred in terms of who was the caregiver when it came to my dad. I thought I was the caregiver, and he probably thought he was the caregiver, but he was wrong.
Yeah.
I remember like there's been this memory popping up, and it's almost like it kind of goes into our next question around like when was our first memory of realizing like, oh, like I'm really like, well, the question is I care about what people think, but this is more like I really am. I noticed that this is where the lines got blurred in my relationship with my dad. There was a night where I was spending the weekend at his house. And I used to always, at my mom's house, I would always sleep in my own bed. At my dad's house, he would put me to bed in my bed, and I would almost always wake up in the middle of the night and need to go into his bed. So there was like that insecure attachment. And one night I woke up to go into his bed, and he wasn't home, and he had left me. And I go to the door, and I'm screaming out the door, "Dad!" My fear in that moment was equal parts, am I okay? And is he okay? And it was like that. And I couldn't have been more than like 6 years old at that point. And I was like so worried about him. Meanwhile, I'm a 6-year-old who was left at home by myself in the middle of the night. And he turns out that he was right next door. His girlfriend that lived next door, he thought that he could kind of sneak out and have a visit. But like, just so there's just these moments in time where I'm like, yep, that was me, like really taking on a lot of emotional work and just being so sensitive. I think my dad kind of gave me like this perfect opportunity. Like I even still, like if I see like an old man like kind of struggling across the street, or if I think too long and hard about like the male loneliness epidemic, like I think about my dad. I think like I'm so vulnerable to like his vulnerability, and nobody asked me to do that. That was something similar to what you shared. Like I just saddled up for that caretaking role. I was like, you know what? I got this. Even into my 20s, late 20s, I moved in with my dad because I thought, you know what? I just need to be there in order for him to be okay. I need to like move right in. And I'll never forget the day that he lived on a tiny little island. He came over with his boat to pick me up and all my things. And he's like overwhelmed, like, oh, she's moving in.
You thought it was a good idea.
There are plants. There are like garbage bags of shoes. Like, oh, she's coming for a while. And I was like, yes, Dad. Yes, I am. So now like I still find that I revert to people pleasing pretty easily. And, I still do think that it's a way of like keeping myself safe. And that's the narrative. Like, I need to do these things. I need to make sure that my husband has a lunch packed and dinner is planned and the dog is walked so that like, I'm safe. Like as long as everybody else is cared for, that means that I'm doing a good job. I'm safe. No one can be mad at me. No one can be resentful. And at this point in my life, it's not based on real life. It's not based on, oh, my husband has gotten mad at me, or, oh, it's not. So it's still just a pattern. It's still me responding to fears that of the possibility, but not rooted in the real experiences. So still some work ahead, but the awareness is there.
Yeah, I think when I think about my first memory, I don't really have a first time. Going to counseling and stuff, they'll think, your first memory, and it's kind of always been there. And I think that when I look at it somatically, I was conceived prior to my parents getting married. There was a lot of stress around them getting married. My dad didn't ever really want children. So I think that I may have felt that right from the very beginning, the stress and the anxiety, and then my mom was very young. My mom was a very quite nervous, anxious person. My dad was very emotionally unavailable. I think that one of the things I can remember is that I have two sisters that are 6 and 9 years younger than myself, and I always felt less than them physically. I always felt they were very beautiful and that I was the ugly duckling and all that. So what I did was I very much took on being a good person. That's how I was going to stand out. My character and my values were very important to me, my personality. So that's kind of where I hung on to things, was that became very important to me, which then probably spilled over into people pleasing, so that I would always be perceived as a good person.
Yeah, I relate
That's
to that.
where I could hang on to that. That became my.
At least I have this.
Totally, and
Yeah.
Like in narcissistic relationships, often when it comes to an end, the narcissist will do a character assassination and start saying bad things. That was worse than the abuse for me. Always was the fact that someone was going out into the world and saying bad things about me. It could literally debilitate me, thinking that was happening, right? So I would say that it was born out of this feeling of less than with my sisters, but it was always there. That just really kind of fueled it for me. And then this desperate cling to, I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to do good.
I relate to that a lot. You made me realize too that like my parents had actually broken up, and then my mom found out she was pregnant, and they tried to make it work for the baby. And luckily it took them, only a year to realize, no, this isn't enough to like make the relationship last. But it was, I was 1 year old and my parents went in two different directions, and I'm the only child they had. And then I was raised in a household with a stepdad, and, my mom had another baby with my stepdad, and my brother got to live with both of his parents.
Yes.
And so there was comparison for sure. And there was that like, my family's complicated kind of vibe. And again, it's like, it's of no fault to anyone. Like none of this awareness is to like gotcha anyone or to be like, this is why. But it is like, it is just to give myself that like almost like reassurance, like you are just doing the best you can with what you had at the time. And some of these things, like kind of like what you were sharing earlier, like I may not need these things anymore. Like it may be time to hang up these tools, like put these tools away. They are no longer serving me. So that's a really important perspective for me to remember, is like, especially too, like, now I'm like living with my husband, and like my behaviors impact him, and he's giving me feedback on like, I'm not asking you to do all that. Like you don't, your anxiety doesn't need to work as hard as it is.
Yeah. Well, I think you touched on two things for me. One is that I think we're both very aligned in how we look at experiences with our parents or people in our lives. We both very much approach it as everyone is doing what they can given their life experience and their trauma or whatever's gone on in their life. And I think both you and I are fairly similar in how we approach those situations. And then earlier also you were talking about the control aspect and people pleasing being often trauma response related. And then that control is really just trying to make sense of something that doesn't feel safe, isn't meeting our needs at that time. And how we're dealing with that is by, well, if we take care of everything and take care of everyone, then we're creating that sense of safety, however false, for ourselves. However, it's not our job. Whatever is happening in the time, we're trying to make sense of a nonsensical, unsafe situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of crazy making.
Well, like you were saying about Brian saying you don't need to do those things.
Yes, I do.
But right, it kind of takes over a little bit, right? When you spend so many years managing the situation to feel safe, it does kind of become that hypervigilant and spill into other areas without the awareness, right? And as an adult, I think that's really where the awareness helps us, is how is this spilling over? How are we not needing it anymore? Let's reel it back and create some space.
Yeah. Yes, I think we're kind of moving into sort of we may have already covered, like, where do you think we're really similar in how we move through the world?
Oh boy, I think we're very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar. And I think that's why we share such a deep connection. I think in the biggest senses, how we view the world is totally aligned. I think we're both deep feelers, caretakers. I think we both navigate in very authentic and vulnerable ways that actually you've expressed this, and I know I've experienced this in my life, that it is almost disarming to some people. How vulnerable and how much we share. It's hard for me not to have that type of relationship. Like
people
if
will
someone
often
just wants
say, I can't believe you could share that much, or I can't. Yeah, I'm like, oh
yeah. If you just want to talk about the weather, you're not my person.
I don't know how to have surface level chit chat. Like I actually get so uncomfortable when it feels so stifled and so. like canned almost.
And I will say, be honest, there's times in my life that I wish I could not be as vulnerable and authentic, but I just don't know how to manage it, right? So I think we're very aligned that way. I think we're very communally based. We care about the world like in a larger sense too. Yeah. We feel things, big things. I think we're both oldest children, girls. Yeah, I think in the big picture, we're very similar.
What do you think makes us different?
I would say one of the ways we're different, which we've discussed is going to be really valuable for the podcast, is generationally, our age difference, right? We bring different life experiences. We're at different points in our life. You're just really embarking on this new career, and you're at the age where family, maybe, like, who knows what's happening, exploring those things, buying your home, exciting first things, right? And I'm kind of on the tail end of all that. I'm launching my last after parenting for 20 years. So I think that brings exciting aspects, and also just I said with the age you learn to say no, and I just care differently about things than I did 20 years ago. A lot of things just get dropped off the table now, and I'm realizing they aren't as important. So I think that our age and our areas in life bring really interesting perspectives.
Yeah. And
when we're talking about these things.
I'm excited to, I typically approach this podcast and like these conversations from a more like psychological, like mental health, and all the feelings and all of that. But I'm really excited to bring in your expertise around like somatic healing, that somatic experience. Can you share just like briefly what that even really entails, or like what's the scope of that?
Well, I think there's a lot of overlap between the psychology. My focus is more on the physical, the body, and how the body has held on to hurts, pain, trauma. When basically nowadays we're living in a world that operates at too fast of speed for how we were made to experience life, and we don't have the time, the space, the wherewithal to be processing all of that as it happens. So whatever doesn't get processed gets held in the body. That's why we're dealing with such high levels of cancer, autoimmune diseases. All of those things are traumas, pains, hurts that have been held in our body. Again, we did it out of wisdom. We often couldn't process it, didn't have the skills to do it, weren't in a safe situation to process it. And then now we're entering a time where it's no longer serving us. So it's almost like I'm going to make you aware that I'm here. I'm going to cause something to happen in the body, so you have to pay attention to me.
Totally.
We'd prefer to deal with it before it gets to that point, but your body is always going to let you know, and it cries out in different ways. So really, it's
like externalizing the experience.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So it's basically tuning into those areas that we're holding those residual feelings, memories, pains, whatever it might be, and just giving the body the space to release it.
That's so valuable.
And it's such pure and simple work. Yeah. And what I really like about it is that you do not have to go back to the experience that created that in your body. You're just talking to the body. What does it feel like? Where is it? How can we move it on? So for a lot of people, sometimes the fear is having to go back and re-experience the pain. You don't have to do that.
Right.
You really don't. It's that kind of one step removed. You're just talking about the body, so we don't have to go into that. And it's really, often
sorry, it's just like really, it's really productive. Like
it is, and it's often really good, like after counseling. Yeah, like after you go to counseling and there's still that niggling, like because you've dealt with it psychologically,
Yeah.
but your body still hasn't released it, right? So they go very well together. And I believe you kind of need both. You need to deal with it emotionally and psychologically, but you also need to release it from the body. They don't necessarily happen on their own in conjunction. They're two different steps in the process.
Well, I think I'm really excited to have your perspective, your expertise, that bringing in that somatic experience, because I think you're totally right. Like, given the person and where they're at on their journey or what is going to resonate with people, like talking about things isn't always the most comfortable or the safest place for people to process. And so, to bring in the body into the conversation, I think it really bolsters the conversation that we're having.
Yeah, and I'm also I instinctively come from a very collaborative view, so I don't necessarily think there's one answer for one person. And I actually think you need multiple modalities. It's like coaching. I say coaching is great after counseling, so you can deal with your things, and then coaching is the moving forward phase after that. Okay, I've dealt with this. What do I do now? Yeah. Right. So I think all these modalities have their benefits at certain times in your journey, and they all benefit each other.
This is kind of a tangent, but I was just in this workshop on motivational interviewing this week, which was very, very cool. Something that I haven't mastered it, but it sounds like a very valuable tool. And the thing that I really took away from that experience is, and this is kind of relating to what you were just saying, is that oftentimes when we approach change, we are especially as like counselors or people in the helping roles, we are expecting people to come in and jump right into action. So a lot of these like sort of prescriptive modalities are like, okay, you're sad. What are we going to do about it? Or like, you want to quit drinking? Well, let's start now. And we don't really give, not just other people, but ourselves the opportunity to like go through a process of healing, like go through a process of self-discovery, of figuring out like what is going to be the right thing at that moment. And so I like that kind of lens of like the journey of healing and how different tools, different perspectives, different ideologies can kind of come throughout your journey so that you can kind of have support start to finish, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I almost feel like there's a bit of a toxic environment around healing right now. It's like, the conversation is always about getting healed. And I don't view it that way at all. Like, I don't think there's an end point.
No.
I think if you're constantly focusing on reaching that end point, the anxiety that creates actually prevents you from healing and growing and expanding, right? So I believe it's a lifelong journey. I believe I can deal with my people pleasing in this situation, but later in life, I'm going to be put in another situation that's going to reactivate it all over again for me. And I'm going to be given another opportunity to grow and develop and move beyond, right? So for me, I really try and take the focus away from healing, but growing. And you're growing forever, forever and always. There's no end, and the pressure we put on ourselves to reach that end is contraindicated to growth and
an
expansion.
end almost feels scary. Like, it almost feels like, so I'm going to get to this point and then like all my supports are going to go away. Like the community I've built, everything's just going to like I remember that when I had a therapist that was like, you know what? I think our work is done. And I'm like, who are you to say that? Aren't I the one to like, anyways. But yeah, I really love that perspective of growth. Like we're growing, we're evolving. Like this is an evolution and it's a cycle. Like there's so many points along the road.
Well, and healing also creates this thing where a lot of people stop living till they've reached that point. Like, I can do this when I get there. I can do this when I get there, right? No, you want to be living the whole entire journey, but I don't know. It just feels like there's a bit of a toxic attachment to healing right now. Like I've got to be healed. Everything's on hold until I'm healed. I don't think it works that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I would challenge that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that in terms of what made us want to do this together, we have covered. Is there anything in particular for you that feels exciting, like that you're like really chomping at the bit?
I feel so excited. I tell you that every time we talk. I feel really excited. I'm so excited to be doing it with you. Mm-hmm. I just love our energy. I love how easily we talk and communicate and share about things. I'm really excited to be building a community.
Yeah.
And I really feel excited with the timing of what's going on in the world and where we're at. That I think authenticity, vulnerability, and community, you can't go wrong. So
the trifecta.
And that's our hope, right?
Yeah.
That's what this is. So I feel really excited.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I feel excited to like bring in new energy and like enthusiasm and like, I don't know, just thinking like of the possibilities feel endless. Like I've just kind of had this renewed hope and inspiration in like creating, and creativity is like really important to me, a value that I don't always get to access, or it can feel stifled at times. And so this feels like a very creative connection to me as well, and a real inspired connection. So I just think that.
Yeah, sorry, you really hit on that creativity. That's always when I get to my low of my lows or get really stuck and restricted feeling, it's always that I'm not having any outlet or honoring creativity, which is huge for me. Again, first thing to fall off the table, because creativity is self-care to me. Yeah. So yes, for sure, that about this opportunity, there's just so many areas to be creative with it. So definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We had kind of outlined what we hope listeners will feel when they listen to us. So we want people to feel welcome here, like that this is a shared space, a shared journey, and that we welcome you.
Yeah, and a common ground where we're dealing with a common struggle, and with people that have experience with it and just understand what it's like to navigate the world as a people pleaser. Yeah,
exactly. Similar to what we were just talking about, like we want this to be a community space. Like, yes, it's a podcast, but like in my mind, we are like all in a circle together. Like we are gathering together. Like this isn't two professionals or two experts talking. This is like someone in your community offering care. That's really how I imagine this.
And we have lots of exciting ideas about how to build community too, which Corie and I are very excited about.
Yes. Yeah. That's, I think, was one of our like jump off points, was like, okay, we don't even know what we're going to talk about, but we know all the community we want to build. We do want to bring in more of the somatic, those sort of practical skills, as well as the practical skills of that are more rooted in psychology and mental health. So trying to give you something that you can actually chew on and maybe take home with you. So trying to not just share our stories and our perspectives, but trying to bolster that with just a little bit of psychoeducation, somatic education, to hopefully be a resource to you, something that actually feels like you can connect to, not just from our stories, but from like, oh, maybe this is something I want to try, or a perspective I haven't considered.
Yeah, I think we both felt really strongly about becoming a resource, or a source of resources for
absolutely.
People.
And yeah, we want to just like invite you to be a part of this conversation. As we grow and develop, we're going to be looking to have more opportunities for like actual conversations, and bringing your feedback, your questions, into our conversations, but also finding ways off of the podcast to connect. So we alluded to that a little bit earlier, but we're going to start here and get the ball rolling. But we will be growing and evolving. That's just the only way. And we hope that, listening to this podcast can support feelings of hope and growth and curiosity. And maybe this isn't a topic that necessarily relates to you personally, but maybe you're supporting somebody, or maybe you are going into a helping career, helping field. And just, again, like, I love the word bolster, but, just bolstering yourself with resource and community.
And also, we both come from the perspective that there's a lot of strength in this,
yes,
as well, right?
Yes.
That to accept yourself and realize that being big-hearted and very sensitive and caring too much also has strengths.
Yes.
We need people like this, like us in the world.
Yeah.
It takes all sorts, and we definitely don't approach this as a broken or flaw-focused or something to be fixed, but maybe something to grow out of, evolve from, and take the strengths of the qualities and characteristics forward in a healthier way.
Absolutely. I love that so much. So, in terms of what's to come, we want to begin with monthly episodes. So we're not going to put any firm dates out there yet because we're just getting started. We're, just full transparency, getting to know a new software and some of the new tech side of things. So wanting to give ourselves enough time to tinker and get a little bit more comfortable. But we will eventually be offering a video format and launching ourselves on a few different social media platforms on top of what we already have. But right now we want to focus on just getting you monthly episodes and reconnecting with you on Instagram at peoplepleaser.pod if you're not already following. And that's kind of where we're at. We're at just kind of like building up our schedule, brainstorming lots of different topic ideas. So this is an invitation to reach out. We also have a new email address. And I have to look, I think it's Corie and Cindy at gmail.com. Super easy to remember. Corie and Cindy, Cindy. So you can also reach us through email if you want to engage in, an off social media platform and just connect and give us your ideas, your thoughts. Yeah,
we're really excited about what's to come and the potential, and just building a really strong, supportive community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our thoughts on our next episode is to just kind of relaunch the concept of people pleasing, kind of bring in the somatic pieces, the psychoeducation pieces, and just begin to build that working definition of people pleasing. So with that, we will share some of our own experiences, but also be referencing a little bit more of the research and the overall understanding of people-pleasing behaviors.
Yeah, a little more educational content, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and talking about what people-pleasing is and isn't, and just all the different ways that it presents in different situations in life, and breaking it down a little bit more.
Yeah.
But still having those personal experiences.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we got to tie it to something. We got to,
of course.
I mean, we're obviously only experts of our own experience, even though I don't think we credit ourselves enough for actually being experts in, our fields of study as well.
Yes. Yes, for sure. So exciting things to come.
So much more to come. But Cindy, this felt really good. We knew that we would not have any problem chatting. So
yes,
there's never going to be a shortage of things to talk about.
No. And bear in mind, this is after we already spoke for an hour and a bit before we started.
Yeah. This is great. Well, thank you everybody for being here. We are just so grateful to be in community with you, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Once again, this is Corie
and Cindy with the People Pleaser Podcast.
Thank you for supporting the podcast. If you liked what you heard, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can find more content from us on Instagram at peoplepleaser.pod. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.